It's been a hell of a decade for roguelikes. Like, for the concept of a roguelike. It's gone from a niche of a niche to one of the most popular tags for indie games on Steam. But roguelikes aren't the same as they were a decade plus ago. Time morphs every genre, but especially this one. The concept of a roguelike has been diced up, mixed with other ingredients, and become a part of an explosion of flavor fusions. You can still see the original roguelike recipe in there, but a lot of these new games are using classic roguelike mechanics as a base to whip up something no one's seen before. There's been arguments about genre labels, but no matter what you call them, this new era of roguelike inspired mechanics has resulted in some of the most creative games around. Not all of them work, but they're all worth talking about. So let's take a tour. Let's talk about a bunch of the freaky roguelikes of the last few years. You ever want to play an RPG that taught you how to program? Today's your lucky day. It's today's sponsor, Boot.dev. If you've ever wanted to learn coding, Boot.dev is the best tool to start out. Boot.dev teaches you back-end web development in Python, Golang, and SQL. They've turned the process of learning to code into a game, full of quests, XP, tons of tasks, and more, all with the goal of getting you coding quickly and getting comfortable with the process. Learning this way is much cheaper than taking a class at a university, and this isn't some shortcut either. You're learning real deal coding, starting with the fundamentals and building until you can write useful code you can be proud of. Head over there and try their totally free demo. You'll see what I mean. Even if you're not looking to become a professional programmer, being able to write, understand, and debug code is an incredibly useful skill in any profession. You'd be amazed at what one good Python script can do for you at work. Go to boot.dev and try out the courses for free. Then use my code DESIGNDOC to get 25% off your entire first year, if you choose the annual plan. Get to love computer programming with Boot.dev. Alright, I think it'd be a good idea to make sure everyone's building off the same foundation before we get too deep here. Let's start with the basics of the basics. What's a roguelike anyway? The question is kinda thorny if you don't know the story. We did a video a while ago about exactly what the deal is, but a roguelike is basically a game that plays at least a little like Rogue, a very popular turn-based hack-and-slash game made for Unix mainframes in the early 80s. Its combination of run-based gameplay, procedural dungeon generation, and difficulty made it one of the most influential games of the time. Much like how the popularity of Doom created a bunch of Doom clones that would eventually become the first-person shooter genre, Rogue inspired so many games that they spawned the genre as well, the roguelike. For a lot of the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, a roguelike was a game that looked more or less like a Rogue reskin. This is the era of Dungeon Crawler Stone Soup, NetHack, and Mystery Dungeon. Devs that loved the high-stakes structure and replayability of the original made their own tweaks, but largely kept them very recognizably still like Rogue. It went on like this for long enough that a group of roguelike developers got together in 2008 to codify this style into a more rigid set of guidelines, the Berlin interpretation of roguelikes. So, that's it. This list of high and low value factors is the final definition of roguelikes. Lol no. Time morphs every genre. Over the past decade or so, tons of game devs got away from adhering to that strict definition of what a roguelike could be. They decided to be more liberal in what elements of Rogue to keep and what bits of creativity they could add to their personal game. And guess what? That kind of thinking started a holy war. The more purist fans of the genre want the label roguelike to still mean what it's always meant. A game that provides that classic rogue hack-and-slash, restart every life from scratch gameplay. But some people don't have the same history with the genre, or the same expectations around what it should or shouldn't be. To them, a roguelike is basically any game that has something that looks like run-based gameplay, no matter what other design elements come with it. Maybe they began to know the genre by playing Spelunky. Spelunky used traditional roguelike elements like permadeath, random dungeons to go through, and lots of clockwork gameplay systems to tinker with. But it's an action platformer, has actual graphics, and the items do the same thing run to run. Is it a roguelike? Or maybe they picked up FTL. FTL has run-based gameplay, it's laid out on a grid, and it has random events. But it plays more like Oregon Trail, has multiple characters to command, and is a weird action tactical hybrid. Is it a roguelike? Or Rogue Legacy. Rogue Legacy made a big show about you making permanent upgrades to your character, so you can build up your stats over time, and improve your chances of making it deeper. Is this a roguelike? And if you like those games, how do you find others like them? The term roguelike became a sort of catch-all. The purists would like these types of games to be their own distinct genre, the rogue-lite, a lighter, less punishing version of the style. Me? I'm okay with playing fast and loose with the label, but only because I don't know that there's a better one. We'll get into that later, but there's a bigger point here. The emergence of more and more roguelike games is revealing a new, and I think more interesting truth. Run-based gameplay is an incredibly powerful platform for all kinds of games, not just ones that look like Rogue. I said in that previous video that there had been a wave of unique roguelikes in the 2010s, but I made that video in 2018. That era's got nothing on what's happened since. Now, anything can be a roguelike. You ever hear about BAZR? BAZR is a wild ROM hack of Mario 64 that turns it into a roguelike. Take Mario 64 Mario and strip him of almost his entire moveset. All he can do is run around and use a few environmental actions like ledge grabbing. All other moves have been converted into cards that you hold in a deck. Kinda like Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories if you played that. Jumps, backflips, triple jumps, punches, kicks, long jumps, even things as simple as crouching are now cards. And since it's a ROM hack, they throw in some crazy extra moves from other Mario games, like the spin attack from Mario Galaxy, or the Cloud Flower power-up from Galaxy 2. All the game's action buttons, B, A, Z, and R, are assigned a card from your limited deck, and each card can only be used so many times before they're replaced with some other action from the top of your deck. If you run out of moves before you complete a stage, that's death. With these limits, you have to play a mostly normal Mario 64 stage and collect the normal stars with your BAZR moveset. These rules can make even the simplest stars in the game a struggle to complete. Bob-omb Battlefield becomes an entirely different beast, especially with the stars on the floating island. The cannons are all closed off. The game forces you to get creative to get around. I ended up having the backwards long jump from the mountaintop to get to the island, and that got the job done. Eventually. The stage you play is assigned randomly, and you have to pay coins to re-roll for a different stage if you're stuck. The ultimate goal of BAZR is to collect 16 stars, then do a gauntlet of the 3 BAZR stages back to back, all with one deck. Every move you make is going to have to be planned carefully, if RNG allows it. Your base deck of moves probably won't be enough to clear the gauntlet, so you'll need to build up for it, find extra cards and stages, or head to the shop to spend coins to buy new cards or improve your existing ones. Making mechanics a scarce random resource immediately converts the game into hitting the same notes as the best roguelikes do. This all still feels absolutely like Mario 64, but also absolutely like its own thing. It immediately breathes new life into the familiar. Mario 64 wasn't meant to be a roguelike, but that doesn't really matter. A roguelike can be as simple as an extra set of rules on top of an existing structure. If those rules can make you think laterally, that can be enough. BAZR is a testament to how flexible the roguelike structure can be. If it can bolt onto a game like Mario 64, what can't it work with? Creative roguelike additions aren't limited to mods. More and more big studio games have been adapting themselves to fit into the roguelike mold, often through DLC. Like Splatoon 3, Side Order. Side Order converts Splatoon into a floor-based, randomized, objective-centric roguelike, reshuffling elements from the rest of the game in new ways. The setup is straightforward. Pick a loadout at the start, and climb a 30-floor tower. Instead of dungeon crawling and brawling your way through, each floor gives you an objective-based challenge to do, in an array of pre-made arenas. Complete the objective while you fight off waves of reskinned single-player and salmon run mode enemies. They've built 5 different mission types in total, from shooting specific targets, to holding Splat Zone-style control points, to pushing billiard balls into goals. You get to choose between 3 challenges, whose rewards ramp up by difficulty. Harder challenges get you more chips and money for upgrading your build. Some challenges have extra danger modifiers, making your job tougher, but you don't want to avoid them forever. Skipping them will cause more danger modifiers to appear later and more frequently. Getting the wrong one on a late game challenge can be very dangerous. It's not a bad foundation for turning Splatoon into a roguelike. The objectives are nice enough, and selecting challenges based on difficulty and rewards adds a touch of strategic thinking that I think is the most fun part of the mode. Now, there's not a ton of new content, but that might still be okay. Many action roguelikes get their pizzazz from the variety of builds you can go for. Different perks and abilities can mesh together to change how you play the game completely. The strategies that you use to make these choices wind up being a little metagame. Builds in side order don't have as much of that. The weapon you choose to start with is the biggest factor, and the abilities you gain mid-run are mostly just stat buffs. There's not as much to think about. That winds up making a lot of runs in this game blend together. 4 or 5 attempts in, and a few hours of work got me my first clear, which is maybe a little low. I didn't even need that many permanent upgrades to make the runs easier. The arenas repeat themselves a little too often too, and there aren't many different bosses. Just a pool of 3 that you see 2 of, plus the final boss. Side Order is a fun roguelike, and for an add-on to an already solid game, it's fine. It's a great foundation that could use some more meat on its bones. Now, you can add a roguelike mode to a multi-million selling game franchise, but let's say you don't have one of those lying around. You might have to make yours from scratch. But how can you make one stand out in this crowded marketplace? Well, you could get more creative with where it's set. A roguelike doesn't have to be a medieval hack and slash. You can hack and slash wherever you want. In Going Under, you're Jackie, a newly hired unpaid intern. This was supposed to be a marketing internship, but instead, her manager has told her to dive into the procedurally generated dungeons beneath the office. There's cool stuff to find in the ruins of 3 failed tech startups that used to work down there. Each startup is a parody of an existing tech company with a fantasy twist. There's an over-caffeinated gig economy firm for goblins called Joblin. There's a demonic dating app developer, Winky Dink. And there's the undead crypto firm making Styxcoin. The big draw here is the heavy dose of satire. This game is drowning in corporate disdain. Even the game's art style draws from corporate Memphis, that bloodless, quirky but not too quirky aesthetic that has been the signature art style of tons of tech companies for the last decade. The game's a straightforward dungeon crawling action roguelike. Combat is very scrappy. Everything's a weapon. Staplers, mops, keyboards, anything handy. You'll quickly burn through the durability on a lot of things, so you have to improvise. But when you lose a weapon, you can quickly pick up and use whatever you find on the ground. The workplace and tech startup satire is all over the gameplay too. The passive skills you find in a run are written like qualities you find on a workplace evaluation. You have ones like open-minded, which increases your crit chance when you aren't locking on to enemies. My personal favorite is unapproachable, which makes a giant buzzsaw circle you. The game goes all in with goofy perks and abilities, including the special consumable phone apps that help you during runs. You got Where's app to reveal the entire floor's map, Winked In, which assaults enemies with emoji text too hot for work, and Tube You, which spawns an inflatable flailing tube man of yourself to draw in enemy aggro. The satire lays it on maybe a little thick sometimes, but better too much than too little if you want to stand out. Going Under unfortunately came out the same week as Hades 1 did their full release, so I won't blame you if it flew under your radar. But it's still there. I'm sure Aggro Crab will take your money. Check it out. You can make your game any setting you want, but you can also make your roguelike any game you want. Peglin is what you get if you made a roguelike out of Peggle. On the top side, some guys are trying to fight you, but to interface with that, you've got to play the board below. Your little goblin guy's got a whole RPG to run through, where damage and effects are determined by the bouncing ball. Punch your way to the end, and rack up special balls and pegs to make your actions more actiony. Bonus damage, resetting pegs, multi-ball, as many little quirks as you can imagine happening with the interactions of balls on pegs. Peglin gets a lot of mileage out of being devoted entirely to making Peggle mechanics the only interaction that matters. Everything is done on this field. Fighting, of course, but so is navigation. To get to the next encounter, you have to go through the right hole on the bottom of the board. And a lot of the pegs from the end of your round are going to stick around while you're trying to get there. It might be easy to go where you want, but you might also clip an edge, bounce the wrong way a couple times, and wind up going exactly where you didn't want to go, or into the fire pit of indecisiveness and light damage. The random bounce mechanics work pretty well with the inherent randomness of a roguelike. After a few bounces, there's absolutely no way to predict where the ball is exactly going to go, so you're going to have to take your chances. Strategizing around the deck of balls you have at your disposal and how to upgrade them makes this feel like more than just another pachinko type game. Peglin's super polished, and since there's only so much strategic planning you can do on this kind of game, it's super accessible too. The game gets a lot of mileage with its events, ball perks, and some surprisingly inventive bosses. This one's worth your time. Every type of game can be a roguelike, no matter how complicated. If Peggle is too basic for you, don't worry. Tape to Tape takes a roguelike structure and makes the core gameplay loop just straight up NHL 94. It seems fun, but you should probably come into it with at least a little arcade hockey muscle memory. It's not super easy to pick up and play, and it's been in early access for 2 years without much of a tutorial. I was gearing up to get into more specifics about how this game works, but it turns out I'm not good enough to do that. I played a chunk of the EA Sports NHL games in college with some roommates, so I have a little background in it, and I'm still finding it very hard to win enough matches to get too deep. You lose one game and your run is over, but the presentation is nice, and the sheer inventiveness of the concept is a lot of fun. If you're better at this kind of thing than I am, this is for you. If you don't want a hockey roguelike, how about an old phone game, the roguelike? Haste is built with a roguelike branching structure, but it doesn't have cards, or turn-based gameplay, or even combat hardly. It's Tiny Wings, if you remember that mobile game, but in 3D. Haste puts you in the shoes of an interdimensional courier, who has to keep reality from falling apart. To do this, you have to travel between shards, which are gauntlets that you complete as you travel from point to point on a roadmap, full of branching paths and nodes with special challenges, events, shops, and bosses. The core gameplay involves running at high speeds in a hilly environment. As you run up hills, you take off of them like a ramp to get some big air. While gliding, you're free to steer and dive back down whenever you want, but to keep your speed and momentum high, you need to land on the downslope of a hill. The smoother you hit it, the more speed you retain, and the faster you'll go. You have to stay quick because reality is falling apart behind you, and if you get caught in the expanding void, you'll lose a life and have to start over. Nailing your landing can also get you meter for special abilities like a grappling hook, a hoverboard, or a double jump, and can help save your run if you use it correctly. The roguelike elements are honestly pretty light here. They act as a thin coating of progression and a ready-made reason to keep going on top of a fun core gameplay loop. But when you combine the two, the package crosses some unlabeled threshold for making a fun sandbox into an actual game that the core loop wouldn't get to on its own. It's not the hardest roguelike out there, and the more difficult moments can get a little annoying, but the hill mechanics are so satisfying that I don't really care. It's another case of light roguelike elements breathing life into an idea. You know, if a roguelike can be any game you want, why not make it every game you want? Just do everything, all at once. Drop Duchy. It's a roguelike, it's a Tetris, it's a Carcassonne, it's a Risk, and it's a deck builder. Your deck is made of resource tiles shaped like Tetris-y blocks. Drop them in a Tetris well and watch as they combo off of each other. Fill in lines for resources, and drop in special building tiles to collect even more resources. As you go, you're also building up an army that will fight enemies when all the tiles are laid down. There's a weapon triangle to think about, but you primarily have to get enough soldiers to defeat the enemy soldiers that get shuffled into your deck. Pick your fights, pick when to reinforce, and maybe leave one of the enemy structures in the holding cell to throw it away without fighting. The more soldiers you save at battle's end, the more resources you get to build up your tile deck and buy upgrades during your run. There's plenty going on at once here, but once you play it for a round or two, the rhythm of gameplay clicks into place pretty quick. It's quite charming, and a great little puzzle roguelike in a totally new format. By this point, you can see how far the basic building blocks of a roguelike can shoot out and blend with other completely random game types. That's one of the main difficulties with figuring out what to call these run-based games. They're all branching off of the roguelike core, but in random directions. What do BAZR and Haste have in common? What do Duchy and Going Under have in common? Maybe you could just call them run-based games, but maybe it's just easier to label this giant hunk of game ideas as roguelikes. I'm okay with that. Though I'm not one to get too precious about what to label genres anyway. I'm more interested in seeing the ideas people come up with when they aren't limited by the genre conventions of the past. That's why I love this new era of roguelikes. People keep finding crazy combinations that break new game design ground. There's a poker roguelike, obviously. I don't have to tell you any more about Balatro. Though someone did just mod in a set of Pokemon cards as replacement jokers, so who knows how much further this game can go. There's a Boggle roguelike. Mark Brown just released a demo for Wordplay, his take on Balatro and Boggle. Punch in words and grab tile upgrades and bonus multiplier modifiers. Turns out that sticking some roguelike rules on top of Boggle works just fine. There's a slot machine roguelike. Luck Be a Landlord has you upgrading icons on slot machine reels to get big combos and big points, and it's pretty smooth sailing to get an infinite run going. There's even a calculator roguelike, like punch in numbers and do some math calculator, but a roguelike. It's called Calculate It, and all you have to do is get the target number on the calculator screen, by any means necessary. Thing is, each key on the calculator can only be pressed so many times during a run. You have to buy like an extra copy of the number 3 in the store, so you don't run out. Or buy the function that turns all 5s into 6s, or trims off the first digit, or snaps the readout to the right number if you're within 10. It sounds like a joke, and it is, kinda. But you know what? It's not bad. The roguelike is just some structure over intuitive emergent mechanics. And that's really all this is. Just the set of emergent mechanics is literally real math. It's worth checking out for $4. The music track is kinda catchy too. There clearly seems to be no limit to how basic you can make a roguelike, but that goes the other way too. My favorite game of the past month takes a bizarre premise to its most complicated extreme. It's Blueprints, the world's first interior design, point-and-click adventure, resource builder, mystery strategy roguelike. Welcome to Mount Holly Manor, the grand estate of your late great uncle Herbert. He was known as quite the puzzle master, and thanks to his infinite wealth and a team of researchers, he managed to build some kind of magic house, filled with rooms that you build and rebuild in an ever-changing layout every morning. In his will, he left the place to you, but only if you can solve his final puzzle. Unlock the 46th room of this 45-room house. You start each new day from the entrance hall, choosing what new rooms appear in front of you every time you open a door, from a pool of 3 options. Every day you have a limited number of steps in the house you can take before you get exhausted, and you'll need to gather keys and gems, resources you use to unlock doors and spend building more exotic rooms. It's hard to compare this game to anything else. It's not far off in tone and gameplay to a game like Myst, but it mixes in a ton of roguish elements in ways that I haven't really seen before in a point-and-click adventure game. This isn't an action combat roguelike, obviously. It's a resource manager, and the way that the rooms are drawn semi-randomly from a pool behaves a little like the typical dungeon generation elements of a roguelike. But the real draw here are the game's onion-like mysteries. If you like the mystery-solving aspect of Outer Wilds, where your own knowledge is the only thing holding you back from the end, there's a lot of that in here too. I can't think of another game with a premise that seems so straightforward on the surface, but is so unbelievably deep below it. I'm 40 hours into this thing, I saw credits roll, and I'm nowhere close to the end. Every room has a new clue. Every room carries more context, and more loose ends to tug at as you slowly piece together what has led you to exploring this house and what exactly is going on here. The roguelike randomness in the room generation does present a challenge though. Blueprints has a skill curve. You can, and probably will, paint yourself into a corner if you go into the house one morning and try to single-mindedly focus on one mystery thread. A lot of the time, you can't get exactly the right room at the right time to progress the thread, and that's understandably frustrating. This game is a ride that you aren't in full control of, but if you're blocked from solving one mystery, there will be 5 more you can make progress on in that run, if you keep your eyes open. What's this thing? What does this note mean? Does this mean anything? Who wrote this? Boy, you sure like chess. What happens when I do this? Let the game come to you, and you'll find the whole ride to be more fun. Most of the time, the only thing holding you back is your sense of perception and logic. The game wants you to use what you've learned in the clues from other rooms to develop new room drafting strategies, new ways to earn resources, and to slowly bump the RNG odds in your favor. Keep a notebook handy, take screenshots, and you'll figure it out. If you think you're stuck, just keep drafting rooms you haven't seen before, and you might just find that note that makes everything else click into place. Over time, like many modern roguelites, each run will get you ever closer to drafting just the right rooms in the right places and in the right combinations to make serious progress. The game will provide, even if what it provides is not exactly what you started looking for. It's not without flaws, but Blueprints is a stunner. A breath of fresh air for both adventure games and roguelikes that only works because it combines complementary elements of each to make something new. I think you could easily take this as a template and apply it to other settings. An office, a mall, a palace, tons of unique stories could be told like this, and I'd be in line day one to try them out. Blueprints is the kind of game that when we look back in 10 years, will be a point of inspiration for dozens more. Now, I know that you know about a bunch of other weird new roguelikes that we didn't mention. You've gotta let the world know, in the comments. Roguelike design principles have broken loose from their rogue origins, and with it, hundreds of amazing new games have been born. Who knows where it'll all go next?